Hi everyone, hi Mom. I had a request to show how I build my journal cover using the Kraft text. So I'm going to do a quick video here. You know, it won't be from start to finish because of drawing time, but you'll get the idea. I'm just going to grab some double-sided tape here. And I've got my glue. Okay, I am ready. So, this will be dependent on the size of journal that you want to make, obviously. But I am doing this cover. I actually have to do this cover right now anyway, so I figured it'd be a good time to just film this part. So, to build the shell, let's call it the shell. I take a piece of Kraft text. Now I buy mine on a bolt and I believe it's 22 inches wide. So it's quite wide, which means if you cut a length of about 14 inches, I always do a little more than I need just in case, you know, I've messed up and then I've got some wiggle room that I can just trim off later. So I actually need 13.5 inches because 1.5 inches will be my spine, or 13.25. Yeah, 1.25. Sorry, 13.25. So you want 6 inches front, 6 inches back, and then you've got another 1.25 inches. I don't know why I keep saying half. Or is it a half? Well, let's measure. Okay. Yeah, it's 1.25. Okay. So I've gone ahead and I have cut it 8 1/2 because my pages, once I've trimmed them, are 8 1/4. So that gives you a little bit of wiggle room on the top and the bottom because you don't want your pages right sitting at the very bottom of your book cover. And 6 inches is perfect because once they're folded, you see you do have some space here. So if you decide to add some tabs, they're not going to stick out past the book cover. Okay, makes sense. Now, this isn't cut to the proper length, but in order to get the right measurement from myself, I'm going to turn this around because it's backwards to me. What I do is I make sure that I've got straight edges on the top, bottom, and one side, okay? And then you put it on your scoreboard and you're going to score at 6 inches. This is the easiest way I've found to do this instead of doing the math. Just score it at 6 inches. Don't push like really hard because you can tear this. It is paper. It's just really cool the way they manufacture this stuff. I don't know how they do it, but okay. So then from the 6, you want to go to 7 1/4 and score again, and that will give you your spine. Okay. Then I simply take the second line and I put it on my cutting board and I cut it at 6 inches. And that way, it, you know, you're not going to boo-boo. So I'll be right back. It's right beside me. And I will cut that at 6 real quick. Okay. So there I have the actual cover. Now, if you aren't familiar with the scoreboard, also an essential tool I can't live without. So add that to your list. Sorry, guys. When you score, there's a dip. Now you don't want to fold it this way. You want to fold it away from you. And it's called mountainside because it's a peak, okay, on that side. That is gives it a little bit more strength. Okay, so then I just go ahead and give that a little push. You don't have to be too picky right at the moment, but you can see that will give you your nice spine. And don't worry about all these bendy places. Once you get your paper on and everything, it flattens it out and it looks great. You should have seen this piece when I did that book cover. Okay, then what you're going to need is another piece, cut it at 8 1/2, the same as your, you know, cover. And this is to cover the spine. So I do 2 pieces so that it's stronger. Okay, now this is the part that I'm always kind of like, okay, I need a 1 quarter, but you know, it doesn't work for me when I put it in the center. So you have to count. There's little lines up here, and I just kind of count how many, you know, sometimes I'm right on, sometimes not, but yeah, whatever. This piece I cut 4 inches. So the 1/2 inch mark will obviously be 2 inches. I know you can't really see that. There we go. 2 inches. Now I want 1 1/4. So if I go here, that's 1/2 from there to there. And then we go from here to here, that's 1 inch. And then if you take one more on this side and one more on this side, that gives you your 1 1/4. Okay, then you simply score just like you did the book cover, just like that. And now you can get rid of this because you don't need it anymore. Okay, bend that like the other one and give it a light push. Now for this part, I do not use decoupage. I use glue and double-sided tape. Now, the trick to using the double-sided tape is only put it in the middle. Now, I don't know if it shows on camera, but one side of the Kraft text is textured. The other side is pretty smooth. I find adhesion is best on this side, but unfortunately, you're not going to get away with only doing the one side. You're going to need cardstock inside, outside. So when it comes to adding the cardstock, which I won't be doing today, you're going to need to burnish it. Now, somebody left me a comment one time that they use a brayer. Brayers are great, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to something like this, they are not strong enough. If I push down on my brayer as hard as I need to get adhesion, I'd break my brayer. And I have a metal one. So it just doesn't work for this particular thing. If you're doing cardstock to cardstock, yeah, you can use a brayer and, you know. Bone folder, another essential tool. You must have a good bone folder. I don't know if you can still get the Martha Stewart ones, but they're really strong, really, really strong. And I like them because they have the curved edge, and I use that end a lot. As well as this end, this side, inside, when you want to roll your paper, and I'll show you what I mean. If you take the edge and you do this on that curved, it will kind of roll your paper down. And sometimes you need that if you're using really thick cardstock, okay? But in the meantime, I will show you what I do for this. So you take your piece, and on the inside, I use Sukwang, which is score tape, basically, okay? I have 2 different widths here. Now I use the narrow piece just for the center, and I'm guesstimating. And the reason I do this is because if you cover this in tape, when you go to get your needle through that spine, yeah, you are going to be turning the air blue. Let's just say that. Yeah, it gets so much glue on your needle that you can't get it through your spine. Also, use your, whether they're the Tim Holtz or, you know, what other, there's other scissors that have the Teflon coating, and the sticky stuff doesn't stick to the blades. It won't stay on the blade. So you do 1 strip in the center, and then I take the wider stuff, because, I mean, save yourself some time, use the wider stuff. Start on the outside edge and just simply run your tape along the edge. I flip it over so I can see where I'm cutting. Butt the next one right up to it. So I know this part's kind of boring, you guys, but I wanted to show you step by step. This is what I do. And then from there, I do have a tutorial on, you know, how I decoupage my pages to the cover. So, you know, if you want to watch that, you can. I will try and remember to link that video in the description box. I'm very bad about putting videos up without putting links in the box. I always forget. Okay, now I'm going to switch back to the narrow stuff, and I'm going to put one more strip here. Flip it around. Now if you find you've got a little overhang, don't worry about it. Once you take your paper off, roll your finger up like that, and it'll push it on top of the tape, and it'll be fine. Okay, now I've got that part done. Next, you want to take your bone folder, and you want to give it a really good burnishing. Sorry, I'm probably wiggling the camera. And unfortunately, you can't tell how hard I'm pushing, but I'm pushing really firmly. Okay, now, the next step. This is really curled. Okay, what you want to do is take your glue, and you're going to remove the tape first before you glue. If you glue first and then remove your tape, your glue's going to dry before you're finished removing the tape. And try not to touch the tape, or touch it as little as possible. You want it to stay as sticky as possible. The next step is going to be hard to show you on camera, but you'll know what I mean. Now I'm going to take my glue, and in the spot that has no tape, I'm going to really coat it with glue. If you get over the tape a little bit, it's not a big deal. You're going to need a little piece of paper towel, because once you put this on, the glue's going to squirt out the end. In this case, I would rather overglue than underglue, because you want to make sure that the spine isn't going to move on you. And when you do it thicker, it takes longer for it to dry, so that's a good thing. Okay, so now gently bend it back, because you've already scored it, you know, you've already bent it, so it's good, but you want to be able to see, you know, your bend marks so that you can line it up on your spine, if that makes sense. Okay, so now let's see if I can do it like this, and then maybe you can see what I'm doing. You want it sitting one right on top of the other. Okay, just like that. Pinch that part and then turn it around and see if you've got it lined up. Okay, so right there, looks like it might line up properly for me. There we go. Okay, then take your bone folder again, and you don't have to worry about the tape side, it's not going to dry. But this part, you really want it to stick down. So give it a super hard burnish in the middle, right up to your score line. You want the glue to squirt out the end because then you know that part's going to stick down. Now, if you don't, you can, sorry, let me get my thought here. Two things at once. Clearly, I can't do them. When you're doing stuff like this where you're adding glue or decoupage or Mod Podge or whatever you're using, and you know, you think you've got it down, and you think you got all the air bubbles, and then you discover a little later, after it's kind of too late, that you might have a little separation in here. This is another essential tool. The list keeps growing. It's a metal spatula, not a plastic one. It's much thinner than the plastic ones, and it's very flexible. What I will do is dip it in my decoupage, stick it in that hole and run it along the edge, and that will spread your glue out, and then you go ahead and you can, you know, burnish that down again. Just a little tip there. Okay, so now once I've done that, then I'm going to burnish the edges, the wings if you want. And when I do that, this is why I love this curved part. So I'm going to push really hard along this edge, and it's going to roll that edge down so that it's not so squared off. And then when you put your cardstock over top of it, it looks better. It just sits better. So roll that down as hard as you can, and then just give it a nice burnish along the edge. You want to make sure that glue, that's a tape, is really sticking. That feels pretty good. And then I'm going to swing it around and do this side. And I sure hope the lighting is okay, you guys. It is really awful here today. We've had 80-kilometer winds. And, you know, then the sun peaked out for, I don't know, a couple hours. And now it's blown in the second storm. So that's normal for here this time of year. A lot of wind. Okay. Now see, that glue is still moving, so you want to keep going back over it, making sure that that part's sticking. You don't want a gap, or at least as small as possible. Okay. All right, now this is the next step that I do. I slightly bend it, and then I take my bone folder and just run it along the crease again. Very gently. Just keep bending as you go. You know, sometimes you have to move that glue away from there, and you get a bit of a bubble like I have here. And, you know, in my mind, that's not a huge deal. I mean, your signatures pretty much cover that anyway. But if you can do it before the glue is super dry, then you can often work that bubble down. Keep bending that up, just running that over, okay? And I'll flip it around to the other side. Okie dokie, that doesn't look like it's stuck there. Okay, so now I'm just going to gently push that. Let's see what happens here. And I've got a little bit of a crinkle. Like I said, not a huge deal. Okay, then what I'll do is I'll just take a little clip and I just clip it so that you can form the spine and let it sort of get used to being bent. You kind of have to tell it what to do sometimes, you know? Bend it with your fingers. It's very pliable, you know? So there's really not a lot of fear with this. And I know I'm going to get asked where I get it from. I almost always buy it from Amazon. And they have it in different colors. I also have a chocolate brown one. I'm kind of saving that because I really like the chocolate brown. But sometimes this color is great for when you're doing lighter colored journals. Then you don't have to paint the edges if you don't want to. And there you go. So that's how you do the book cover shell. And then from there, I always cut my pages I want 1/8 of an inch top and bottom side. So, you know, take it down another 1/4 of an inch. If your journal cover is 8.5, so do 8 1/4 by 5 3/4. And you might have to fudge a little, you know, trim a little bit off, but start with that size, and that'll get you a nice small little ridge there that you can paint if you want. I mean, sometimes I paint, there's a little bit of paint on this one. Sometimes I don't, just it depends on the paper I'm using. Okay, I hope you found that helpful. Thanks for watching. Bye.